Hey everybody, and welcome to Face Value episode 8. That's not an 8. 18. 1 8 18. Face Value episode 18. Anyway, glad you could hop on here and be with us today. And I went to Walmart today and I wore a face mask for the first time since all this stuff started. I haven't been wearing a face mask, not because I am anti face mask, but just because until they said it was necessary, it's not something I was interested in doing. I do have my opinions on wearing face masks or not wearing face masks, but those opinions don't really matter, just like most of our opinions don't really matter. But I made my face mask out of underwear, so not like tidy whities or anything like that, but if you have a pair of old boxer briefs, it's a nice kind of stretchy material, and I cut out a big square of it. They were clean, by the way. I'm not sure whose they were. Just kidding. Anyway, and so fold them up. Got me a couple rubber bands. Boom. It's good to go. Used a little craft glue to make sure things stayed together. So it was fantastic. But I wore a mask for the first time, and the thing that surprised me the most about the mask, it wasn't too hard to breathe. Turns out underwear are breathable, but the thing that surprised me the most was how weird talking was. Like, I thought it was really weird when I tried to talk to people. I don't know if I sounded weird or not. At least, I don't know if I sounded any weirder than normal. But I definitely, whenever I talked, it felt muffled. And so I felt the need to, yell at people, not out of anger, but to yell so that they could understand me. Because it was so, I don't know. I mean, just imagine me trying to do a face value and doing it like this. It just seems weird to me. It may sound fine. I have no idea. But that is literally what it was like when I was talking. So you can take that at face value. Anyway, so hopefully you're all out here staying safe and helping people out as best as we can. Hopefully we'll be to some large degree out of the woods before too long. Lots of different projections on how long that'll be, whether it'll be months or whether it'll be, year and a half, 2 years, whatever. But I am super hopeful that this will pass a little more quickly than what it could. Another quick update before we get into the word. I told you yesterday that I played chess with friends, and Danny Shaw got on and he was like, "Yo, I like chess," and I was like, "Cool, man, add me." And then I was like, "But if you add me, then I'm gonna have to talk about how I beat you." And well, let's just say I haven't beaten him yet, but we're about 2 moves from that place. So Danny, God bless you. Thanks for hopping on and being my friend and playing chess with me. This will be the only time, unless we talk smack or something, that I let the whole world know that you're going down. My chess nickname is the Anaconda because I put the squeeze on you guys. I gave myself that nickname. No one has ever called me that besides myself, but I told my brother, because he's one of the 2 guys that I beat regularly. Sorry, KC, you don't watch these, so I can say whatever I want. It's basically behind your back. But anyway, man, I need to get to the Bible. I need the Bible. You need the Bible, but I really need the Bible. I've got problems. So yeah, anyway, Danny, it's been fun. If you see this, it's been fun playing you in chess. I hope that that didn't scare you away with my awesomeness. So it's whatever. John chapter 8, that's where we're at today. If my wife's watching this, I don't hear her laughing, which probably means this isn't funny. And I'm really sorry to everybody else who has had to endure what she's enduring. John chapter 8, verse 48 through 59. I've got one main thing. I read over this probably 10 minutes ago, and I was like, man, this is the point that I want to hammer on here. It says, "The Jews responded to him," saying they responded to Jesus, "Aren't we right in saying that you're a Samaritan and have a demon?" Well, I'll give you a heads up. Jesus did not have a demon. And so Jesus then tells them, I know I gave you a heads up for what was in the very next verse, "I do not have a demon." And he says, "On the contrary, I think someone's trying to break in. I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it and judges. It's okay for God to seek his own glory because he's God. When you're the most awesome being in the entire universe, it's okay that you expect people to treat you like the most awesome being in the entire universe. Now, God's really cool, apparently, because while he is the most awesome being in the entire universe, and he could have just said, listen, you screwed up, you don't ever have anything to do with me, and just I'm going to squash you like an ant. He didn't do that. He did. There was a separation that happened whenever unholiness entered into the situation. And unholiness didn't have anything to do with holiness, and there's this gap that sin had created. But God didn't just leave it at that. God had a way bigger plan, and that plan was forever, and we'll get there in just a second. And so he says, truly, I tell you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. That's a big promise from Jesus. If you're watching this, Jesus says, if you keep his word, you will never see death. Now, clearly, we've seen that everyone who has kept the word of Jesus has seen death. And so either that means Jesus was wrong, so he was resurrected from the dead, but was wrong about this, or he didn't mean physical death. And I mean, that's certainly key in this point. He wasn't talking about physical death. Danny's moving. He's getting me one move closer. I better go ahead and take this. All right. That was good stuff right there. Anyway, so I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that again. And so he says, you'll never see death. And then the Jews said to him, now we know you have a demon. And those are big words, right? They're looking at who we believe to be God. And they're saying, we know you have a demon. And then they say, Abraham died and so did the prophets. You say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death. And what they're doing is they're saying, listen, Abraham's a big deal. Abraham was awesome, and Abraham died. So who do you think you are saying that we won't taste death because we follow you, we trust you, we believe in you, we keep your word? That's stupid. We keep the words of Abraham. We keep the words of Moses. That's who we keep the words of. And then they say, are you greater than our father Abraham who died? Verse 53, and the prophets died. Who do you claim to be? And we see that question. Jesus actually asks it to his disciples. He says, who do you say that I am? Who do men say that I am? And then Peter would eventually say, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. You're the Lamb who takes away the sins of the world. But they say, who do you claim to be? And Jesus says, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. My Father, about whom you say he is our God, he's the one who glorified me. He's saying the one that you're supposedly a follower of, the one who you supposedly follow his law and his rules and you seek after him, he's the one who glorifies me. So we should be on the same page and the same team. And then he says, you do not know him, but I know him. And this is this back and forth where Jesus has told them, you don't know him, I know him. Your father is the devil, and he's the father of lies. And he's saying, you don't know him. If you knew my Father who sent me, then you would believe in me. You'd follow me. And then he says, if I were to say I don't know him, I'd be a liar like you, but I do know him. And that, I know I say this over and over again, but it's huge. Like, that's a big claim for Jesus walking the earth, this man that's standing before them, to say, I know God. Not just I follow his rules and I plan to meet him one day, and I plan for him to redeem me and to redeem our nation and all that. He's saying, no, I know him. And he says, but if I said I didn't, I'd be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. Now, their response to this makes a ton of sense. And they say, you're not 50 years old yet, and you've seen Abraham? Hey, Mr. Jesus fellow, this doesn't make sense. Mr. Jesus, Mr. think you're a teacher or something, you think you know God. You don't know Abraham. Abraham didn't rejoice at your coming. Abraham is long gone. Abraham is super dead. Abraham is thousands of years in the grave, dead. And so there's no way he rejoiced at your coming unless you're super, super old. And at that point, on accident, they're on to something. And then in verse 58, Jesus says to them, truly, I tell you, before Abraham was, and then here comes two big words that are going to floor them and make them angry and make them want to kill him. I'll read verse 59 real quick. It says, so they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus was hidden and went out of the temple. What made them want to kill him? What made them want to stone him? What made them want to throw rocks at him to where he would die? By the way, I don't know what it means he was hidden. Like, did he become invisible? Did he just sort of go into the crowd? I don't know. He's God. He can do what he wants. I'm not sure. It doesn't tell us. But what are these two words? He says, before Abraham was, I am. Now, if you're speaking to a group of Hebrew people, especially ancient Hebrew people, really only ancient Hebrew people, if you're speaking to a group of ancient Hebrew people or people who still even to this day really, really follow the law, these are huge fighting words, like the biggest fighting words in the world. He's not just saying, I know God. He says, before Abraham was, I am. And what did God say to Moses? If you're familiar with the story of the Exodus, what did God say to Moses in the burning bush? Moses was like, what's your name, man? This is crazy. There's this bush and it's burning and it's not consumed, and fire consumes things, and just, this is impossible. And what, I'm having this crazy encounter. What's your name? Who should I tell them is sending me? And God says to Moses, and you can say it out loud if you know it, I am that I am. You can tell them that I am that I am has sent you. And Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Yes, I know God. And then Jesus is saying, yes, I am God. I can't remember whether it's in one of the John's letters, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd John, or whether it's in one of the letters Peter wrote, 1st or 2nd Peter. I think it's in, I want to say 2nd Peter, where Peter's talking about Christ, and he says, he is the Lamb who was slain before the foundations of the world. He's speaking of Jesus, and he's saying Jesus is the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. What does that mean? It means that when we think of eternity, we think of a timeline. We think of, the beginning of creation right here, on this line. We think of where we are as somewhere over here, and we think of the end of the world as over here somewhere. So we're here, beginning of times here, end of the world somewhere in this area. And we see this linear idea of how time goes. And I think it's C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity. He's speaking of how God is and the eternality of God, that he is always, he's eternal. And when he's speaking about that, he says, for we see it as a line, but the way that God sees it, it's like it's a sheet of paper. Like there's a sheet of paper, and instead of it being here to here, God sees it all at one time. That God sees the creation at the same time as he sees the end, at the same time that he sees right now. That because God is existent outside of space and time, God sees the whole page. He sees the whole story. And Jesus, what am I saying where he is that he is? What am I saying that he was the Lamb that was slain before the foundations of the world? What I'm saying is that it's not like God created the world, Adam sinned, and then there was this sin gap, and then Jesus showed up, and Jesus had to fix things because somewhere in here God had to figure out what was going to happen. No, what happens is that before God created you and me, before he created the first Adam, he knew that giving us free will was going to result in us doing things that would not meet up with his standards, that we would miss the mark. And because he knew we'd miss the mark, he's giving us this choice to love. Some people hate that idea that, well, why does God even allow sin? To me, there's no way that we can reciprocate the love of God unless God gives us a choice in the matter. And Anyway, so we have this choice, and all of us have chosen wrong at some point or another. And God says, I know you're going to choose wrong. And because I know you're going to choose wrong, I'm going to send the Savior. Always God's plan from before the time that Adam was created. I'm going to send a Savior, and He is going to wash away your sins and redeem you. And what's the spirit, no, the ministry of reconciliation, and he will have the ministry of reconciliation to reconcile man to God once more. And you say, man, that is really difficult. You know what else is really difficult? That Jesus would exist before Abraham did, that before Abraham was, he is. You know what else is really difficult? To turn water into wine. Do you know what else is really difficult? To heal the lame man. Do you know what else is really difficult? To heal the blinded eyes so that they would see. You know what else is really difficult? Is for a virgin to give birth to a baby. You know what else is difficult? Is for someone to be reborn. It's not just difficult. These things are impossible. And what is John's purpose? We talked about this, I think, just the very last episode. His purpose is to say, in the beginning was God. He is one. And that God became flesh and dwelt among us in the person of Jesus. And then at the end of John's gospel, he says, and I write these things so that many may believe. Because here's the deal. If Jesus is raised from the dead, then all of our faith hinges on that. Then the impossibility of turning water into wine is possible. If Jesus was raised from the dead and he lives forevermore, then all of a sudden the idea that a lame man can walk becomes possible because God is the God of the impossible. That all of a sudden the idea that Abraham could rejoice at the coming of Jesus makes sense because he's the God of the impossible and he's the God of forever. And so John's just over and over and over again giving us these realities of this is who God is. This is who we see him in the person of Jesus Christ. And this is who he forever will be as he reigns in his kingdom and as we are co-heirs with Christ. Because God is eternal and he's eternally loved you and he's eternally had a plan to redeem you from your sins and your shortcomings and where you've missed the mark. God's plan was always that you would be reconciled back to him through Jesus. And that is his invitation to you. Nothing you've done has surprised him. Nothing you will ever do will surprise him. But God is for you and he loves you and he will eternally love you. And you and I can take that at face value. Hey, God bless you guys. I hope you have an awesome day. And I am going to get off here and finish beating Danny at chess.